Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the ANS Higher Education webinar. I'm Adam Spurr, and I run the business applications practice here at ANS. I'm delighted, as you can see, to be joined by David, the CIO of TEDI-London, who's going to share with us some of his experiences. When I was putting a little bio together, David, I do the same thing, and I say, been in IT for 20 plus years, and that just makes me feel old. Yeah. So listen, as a parent of an 18-year-old, I was just saying to David that's going to university this year. I can only empathise with the higher education and our university customers and people that we know. It's a huge sector for ANS with over 30 institutions as customers, and it's been a tough time for us all. So quickly at the front end, if you've got a question, please put your hand up. If you can use the little button in Teams, that'd be great. I can answer any questions in the chat as we go along. Or if you're brave enough to put your video and ask a question, then that's also fantastic as well. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. The agenda for the day is really straightforward. I like doing things in threes. Got 2 minutes on ANS and higher education. Introduce David and have a conversation. David, give you a background on TEDI, and then also to give you we're going to ask a few questions back and forth just to get that conversation flowing. So I want to tell you a couple of things about ANS for everybody who doesn't know. Most people do know. We're a 300-person organisation founded in 1996. We've got a 50-50 split of private sector and public sector organisations. And we have, as I said earlier, 30 plus higher education establishments that we work with all the time. So in terms of what ANS do, it's really very simple. We spend our time trying to get people into the cloud migrations, data center, moving into the public cloud from their legacy applications. Then we spend a lot of time trying to understand people's data, making sense of it, data centralization, analytics, BI, and then also on top of that, we do an awful lot of business applications. So be that the Power Platform, Dynamics, local government, HE specific applications. One thing we're very proud of, and my marketing team would not let me do a presentation without saying that this year we're absolutely delighted to be Microsoft Partner of the Year finalists. And the only Dynamics partner in the top 3. So great honour from 3,300 partners. And that's my little plug done. So ANS in higher education. So I have a bit of a vision. ANS got invited into playing the dynamic space in higher education by Microsoft about a year ago now. And working with our partners like David and a few of our other Dynamics customers, we figured out that we should be talking about students in before they come there, during, after, and then the B2B relationship. And these are all of the modules that we talk about with our higher education customers. And my vision for this is that people in universities are spending way too much money deploying these types of solutions. Traditionally been spending way too much money. So my objective in entering into the higher education market with Dynamics is to work with people like David and Teddy and other our customers to build these types of modules on top of the higher education accelerator from Microsoft, and then make them available so we can all benefit from the work that a number of people are doing. Eventually, what that'll do is, we'll get to a situation where we've got 80% of the functionality that we need, for example, in recruitment and admissions, or in curriculum management, or in student inquiries, or alumni, or fundraising, that most of us can enjoy, built on top of the higher education accelerator. Okay, so just going to pause there. Probably no questions from a 2-minute pitch on ANS. So let me introduce David to you for a moment. Hi, David. So quick bio on David's worked in technology and transformation over the last 20 years from a number of different sectors, which is interesting. retail, financial services, and the private sector, and then also local government, regional government, higher education. For the last 10 years, senior roles in local government and HE, significant digital transformation initiatives, helping organisations get into that digital space and the needs of today's digital audiences. Prior to TEDI, 2.5 years at Lewisham Council, rationalising their IT estate, using technology to drive channel shift, and then a year at Bristol University, where he's responsible for programmes and developing a smart campus to improve the student digital experience. David, is that a reasonable summary?
That'll do, Adam. Yeah, I should employ you really, shouldn't I? Do a bit of PR for me. That'd be good. Come to my next job interview if you like.
I've done it on LinkedIn, so we're all good. So you want to just give us a quick introduction? I'll drive your slides for you on who TEDI are for the rest of the audience.
Yeah. So, I mean, TEDI-London we are a brand new higher education institution. We've got 3 founding partners, which are Arizona State University in America, King's College in London, and a University in New South Wales in Sydney. And they've come together to really fund us as a project to develop specialist engineering education for design engineering. So if you go on to the next slide, Adam. So it's a new type of engineering education for future engineers. And the next slide. And really, we're here to inspire, disrupt and transform. I think that the vision that our Dean and CEO has is really that we want to open up engineering education to those from non-traditional engineering backgrounds, so not necessarily requiring a maths and physics A-level, and that we will be using technology and other things to embrace a different way of interacting with both the materials and with getting a wider cohort of people involved in engineering education. We've got an aim to recruit 50% women students into our course, and we're looking for people from diverse backgrounds, both educationally and within communities. Next slide. And the main sort of aspect of the pedagogy really is that it's going to be industry-led and project-based. So we have some learning, I think, with that's self-led through nodes on a learning tree, but actually the core curriculum in terms of what people are going to be assessed against are going to be real-time projects, really, measured against sets of criteria that people produce products. And we've trialled this with our summer school in the last 2 years. So the summer school this year, we had 147 students from 21 countries, done it all virtually, and they worked on a range of projects to create a dementia-friendly environment. You seem to have got the transitions running on that, Adam. I don't know whether I left them on. I thought I took them off, but there we go.
Normally you must speak faster then, David.
Oh, I must speak faster. So this is the digital strategy, and you can't see it that well, but in general sense, what we're looking at is cloud first, cloud only if we can. I think I've got one requirement so far that might require a local box, but other than that, we're going to run everything in the cloud, and a Microsoft first approach. And the reason for that really is that, we've invested in the Microsoft Office 365 licenses, and it's about driving the value that we can out of those, but also in terms of trying to reduce integration overheads and technical overheads for external solutions, really. So wherever we can, we're going to look to use Microsoft tools, not everything, but wherever we can, and driving the value that we can out of that. And we've got a bit of a dance going on with the slides. So we're going to the last slide, really, which just gives a bit of an overview of where we are with the development of the technology. I won't go into too much depth in that, probably slightly outside of the scope for this in terms of the wider construct. But for me personally, I've got an opportunity to build a technology estate on a greenfield site, which is something, for the last 10 years, I've been dealing with legacy technology and technical debt. And so it's a good opportunity, I think, for me personally. But also it poses the question, what do you build if you could start again? So if you could start again and you didn't have that legacy, what would you do? So I think for me, thinking that through as a thought exercise and understanding where the value is has naturally led me to think about the Microsoft tooling as well, which is a place I probably 5 years ago wouldn't have expected to be. I think, like a lot of people in technology, I've gone from sort of loving Microsoft many years ago to hating them for quite a long period of time, to coming back to loving them again in probably the last sort of 2 or 3 years. So why are we here with ANS Group? Really, I think broadly speaking that we want to develop a student record system. We've solutioned that out to try and build it in Dynamics 365, and we've appointed ANS Group as our preferred partner to help us to do that. It aligns really with our business vision, but it also means that I believe that it reduces our IT overhead significantly in the long term.
Perfect. So, David, just summarising, Teddy, three major institutions backing you.
Yeah.
Big players in their own continents. What about a campus that you're building? Do you want to just touch on that, because that I think that's really interesting to everybody.
Yeah, so we're based in South London, and we're on the Printworks site, which is currently owned by British Land, and we're right smack bang in the middle of the largest planned urban regeneration project in the world. So the Canada Water Peninsula is going to be having somewhere in the region of 100 billion invested in it over the next decade. And we're the first live project that British Land have. So we're developing a campus, a temporary campus initially. So it's a 5-year lifespan on a modular build campus, which we take delivery of next May. That has a 5-year lifespan whilst the developments in Canada Water are being ongoing, and we'll eventually have a campus built as part of that redevelopment. So our first industry partner is British Land. They've been working with us. We've got a very good relationship with them, and a lot of the projects that our students have been working on are about giving them real practical solutions that they can use as part of the redevelopment. I mean, it helps them as well with their community kind of relationships, and it also helps them with the planning applications and other relationships with the council and other stakeholders, to have us a part of that. So some mutual benefits with that, but it's very exciting, I think.
Very excited. So the three people, the Canada Water, 50% girls, non-maths and engineering.
Yeah.
Exciting times. Exciting
times, and I think there's a simplicity to it as well, Adam, in terms of, I think my time at Bristol University, having 27,000 students with 10,000 course combinations, there's a whole degree of complexity there that we're not having to deal with at TEDI. So we're going to do one thing really well, which is engineering education, and we're going to do it better than anybody else, and that's why we exist. The reason why the founding institutions see us as a viable proposition is that they realise to do change in their own organisations is difficult.
Yeah.
To make a change in the way that you do a delivery of education, or to change a technology estate, is a difficult process to go undertake and to go through. So we exist because we can do things in a more agile way and with a specific focus in a way that they can't on their own.
Do you think they'll take some of the learning that you create here back into their big legacy universities with all the traditional things that we've seen?
Yeah, for sure. So certainly from the technology, they're already starting to listen. I think, so in Arizona, we was under quite a lot of pressure to adopt their learning management system and their solutions when we went on our first inception. But as we've started to solution our own systems and offers, and we've started to show those to them, they become more interested in what we're doing than the other way around. And I think there is an element of us being a sandpit, both from an academic perspective and from a technology perspective, in terms of what we can do and make possible that other people can replicate. And I think all three institutions are keen on that. Certainly, we've got David Kellerman at UNSW, who's done a lot of work with extending his team's implementation, and the IT team at UNSW are really keen on what we're doing with Dynamics here, and are looking to want to do something very similar out there.
So, if you could just share with us, top 3 things, why you needed a system, what you were looking for. Not specifically about the technology, but more around enablement. What were the 3 main things that you were thinking about that this must be doing?
Well, I think when you look at the functions of a student record system or a student information system, and I think in lots of ways the two things are interchangeable now. I think the way that maybe we'd conceptualised that in the past was that your student record system would be responsible for capturing data, and your student information system would be responsible for surfacing data. I don't think there's much of a difference now. I think you generally bunk them together as the same thing. And for me, it's about how you've got to manage a student life cycle. So I have to be able to take applications, I have to be able to register students, I have to enrol them, I have to be able to give them a timetable, I have to monitor their progress. So all the things that come with that. So I need a system really that can capture and manage that data securely. I need to be able to offer a joined up customer pathway. So from that first contact, so as part of our marketing effort. We've identified this is a person that's had some contact with us right through to their enrolment. So I want that same line. So when John Smith sends us an email to send an inquiry on his first contact to say, who are we, what do we do? We've then followed John's journey all the way through to when we've enrolled him as a student. And then, we want to be able to offer the student view. So where are they in their cycle? So when they make an application to us directly, they can see the progress of that application. When they've come to an assessment day, they can see the outcome of that assessment day themselves. When they've enrolled with us, they can see the status of their enrolment, and they can see the progress that they're making on their course. So when they're assessed and they're graded, they're able to see and view that information. So broadly speaking, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. So just in terms of, there's lots of systems out there, right?
Yeah.
And we have a challenge every day when we're talking to our university and higher education customers. Some people, I think the record at the moment I've seen is 33 different CRM systems. They've all got, because they've built up a legacy of one system on top of another system, all doing a variety of things. So, why did you think the Microsoft stack was going to be a good platform decision for you versus sort of a more traditional, we'll use this for that part and this for this module and this for this module?
Oh, that's a good question, and I think again it comes back to that being in the greenfield kind of scenario. So I speak to Nick Leake at KCL. He's got 37 CRM solutions at KCL. And I think that the complexity that you generate, we're trying to transition from that is huge. And and unfortunately, I'm not in that position. So again, what would you do if you're building it from scratch? Then ultimately, when you think about what IT is, it's about the data.
Yeah.
Right? It's about the information. The technology is the second issue, isn't it? It's the second word in information technology, but for me, it's the second issue. So if you can get as many things as possible operating out of a common data service, you've automatically reduced your complexity and reduced your IT overheads. So for me, then lending into the Microsoft stack, I've already invested in Microsoft technology from Office 365 licenses. So then can I meet those functional requirements for student record system within that Microsoft tool set? So, I've done some analysis on that, and there were already some solutions built on Dynamics out of old versions of Dynamics, and I've always felt that it was possible to do. And I think that, when you think about what a system is really, Adam, it's, any application, it's a database with a data model in it, a set of workflow and some forms, right? It's not really more complicated than that. The complexity comes in the volume. So when I think about the off-the-shelf solutions, what they've built is complex solutions, actually, for complex data models. And I don't have that at TEDI. For me, that would be over-engineering a solution. If I was to go and buy the Tribal SIT solution for TEDI-London, as an example, not picking on Tribal, I think as an example, it would be over-engineered for my requirements. It wouldn't be what I would need here. And so, I'm not less. And I think the other thing with the off-the-shelf solutions, you're buying an overhead in terms of your integration architecture.
Yeah.
Because quite often you're constrained with the off-the-shelf solutions in terms of what integrations you can use, what other technologies you can use alongside them. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to be constrained with that. I wanted the flexibility really to be able to choose solutions that work best for us.
So we see a lot of people thinking in a similar way, even though they've got the legacy systems. What they're saying is, if we're moving into this Dynamics, and I know Dynamics has got this 50% market share in HE right now, that's well publicized. But if we're moving into Dynamics, I'm going to bite little pieces off as I go, and then my overall vision is I'm going to have some data at the bottom, which is all in a common data platform.
Yeah.
But they're not biting off the big elephant all at the same time. So there's lots of different systems out there. How did you go about choosing Dynamics? What was the thought process?
So I think the thought process for me really is to think that I've had some experience of working with the incumbents, and I think the complexity that they offer in terms of the solution isn't necessarily what I thought that I needed. And I think we'd already agreed an internal strategy for a Microsoft first approach. I'm looking to reduce my long-term overheads, and it just seemed that building a solution on Dynamics 365 was common sense. I provided the TEDI-London board with other options to consider, because actually the upfront cost of building solutions on Dynamics are higher than the purchase of implementing some solutions now. But actually on a long-term basis, it's actually less cost. So when I've done the total cost of ownership analysis of building something now on Dynamics, as opposed to a long-term cost of ownership for a COT solution, it's actually preferable. And that's without taking into account that what you're actually buying into is the Microsoft upgrade path.
Yeah,
and that's a very powerful thing. So they've already got a very powerful set of tools, right? Some enterprise technology stack that's secure. I don't have to worry about security in any way, shape or form, particularly. It's just about configuration. It's low code, no code environment. So I don't have to worry about having high skilled technical developers that I've got to employ in-house and run as a costly overhead. It's low code, no code. You can do all the automation through the Power Platform. So I'm already thinking that I'm reducing overheads by buying this, but actually the cost on a TCO over 5 years makes a lot of sense anyway. So for me, the decision wasn't a difficult one from an IT perspective. I had to do some work with the board at TEDI in terms of letting them understand from a cost perspective that it was a viable option.
Mm. So big question that we always get asked, even when it's either an off-the-shelf product or it's some people have built some things on top of Dynamics, as you know, is IP or not IP, and the Microsoft Higher Education Accelerator. You know, do we go with some IP that's already been built that might get us there faster, or do we help build our own IP that will not put us into what you call that technical debt scenario?
Yeah, so I mean, again, it's a really good question, and it was a lot about my thinking really on the direction to go. So you know, I know the market reasonably well. I know the Dynamics solution quite well, and I was aware that there are other products that had already been built on older versions of Dynamics that I could purchase, that could surface and you know, service some of those student processes almost immediately. You know, you'd have to do an implementation, and configuration would need to be local. But I think the challenge that some suppliers have now is that for me as a customer, buying into an IP is a constraint, especially when I'm buying an IP on an enterprise platform. Because if I buy an IP on for Dynamics on the Microsoft platform, I constrain my own ability to use and benefit from the Power Platform. So it makes no logical sense for me to be able to do that. I mean, I was in Seattle in February and I was speaking to James Phillips and Joey Belfiore about this, and they completely agree. And the whole reason for the Accelerator program existing is that they see the evolution of the Microsoft stack being outside of supplier IP. Now, they won't say that to their gold partners in public. That's not what they're going to say, but that is where it's going. And I think the smart suppliers have already seen that and are evolving with it. From a customer, I don't want to have an IP-able solution. What I want is an organisation that's going to work with me in partnership to build the right solutions that I need today and to iterate those solutions on an ongoing basis. Because one thing I can guarantee from any IT implementation, when you finished it, you're going to want to change it. There used to be, you know, it used to be in the old days when we thought about these in a very linear way, that you do your implementation, and then you'd shut down the project, you'd finish all the funding, and then you'd run it for 10 years until it broke, right? But we know that we're going to want to make changes on an ongoing basis, that we're going to want to pivot our processes and change the way that we interact with our customers. So having some capability where you can do that as an iterative process and the relationship with the right supplier to be able to support you to do that is really important. So buying IP solutions isn't somewhere I wanted to go. I think it is an outdated model. I think some suppliers are still behind the curve, especially when they're trying to build and sell IP solutions on an enterprise product. It makes no business sense to me to want to do that.
So just moving into TEDI for a minute then. So you've just run a summer school.
Yeah.
Right. The interesting thing about running a summer school is you were always planning on doing it. You know, it's been virtual, and how we get every students back to university is a hot topic.
Yeah.
What are we going to do virtually? What are we not? What are we going to do social distance? What are we not? So, you know, tell us about it. Tell us about it. How did you run it in terms of a technology?
So again, we just used a Microsoft toolset. So pretty much out of the box, Microsoft Teams. You know, we had some configuration to do. We had some understanding to do in terms of permissions and access and things like that. You know, my team had to get their head around with some PowerShell scripts and things to make sure that, you know, the right permissions were applied to the right people in the right way and the right level of access. But it was fairly straightforward. I mean, there was some work to do, and there was some understanding in terms of how people wanted to interact and communicate and share information. But it was all configuration, so there was nothing that difficult. You know, there was things and problems that we needed to solve for each of these things, and there were things that we needed to solution with specific solutions that were either already integrated within the Teams interfaces or other things that we needed to surface through the Teams interface in a tab, for example. But we ran it all through Microsoft Teams and OneNote for collaboration. And I mean, we had industry partners working with the students. We had a range of other externals. We had, teachers and mentors from all of our partner institutions all engaged on that platform, and 147 students from 21 countries. And they worked for 8 weeks on a range of projects that was really successful. A number of those are going to be adopted by British Land, and they're looking for IP on a couple of the products that they developed as well. So I think, we've shown, I think, that you don't necessarily need to be physically present to have a good learning experience. And in some ways, I think COVID's forcing this on other institutions as well.
Yeah.
Is it a sufficient substitute to having everybody in a room and working together? Probably not. Right. I think there's some benefits to that you can't replicate online, but is it possible to deliver good learning experiences fully online? I think absolutely. And for us, we've learned a lot from the work that Dave Kellerman's done at Sydney, in terms of it. This isn't about the student having a battle with the website or having a battle with the LMS. This is about creating a community of learners. So how can we get people to communicate and collaborate with each other well? I just think the Microsoft toolset lends itself to that really well.
So, advice, challenges that you were along the way thinking about. I know you've got a new system and you've got a greenfield, so I know you consider yourself to be in a very, very lucky position.
Yeah.
But thinking back to your time at Bristol now, and in some of those other establishments that you've been in, what's been a good and a bad about this process that you've been through?
So I think from my perspective, I kind of knew when I arrived here what I'd like to achieve. I took the HE Accelerator for a test drive last August when it was released, when I was on holiday with my wife. I didn't tell her that's what I was doing, but I understood at that point that this is going to be the future in HE. And I was aware that Tribal had already, they've been looking to acquire Crimson, and had bought Crimson, and other main players in the market are looking to evolve within the Microsoft toolset. And so for me, finding somebody to work with me on that really was part of the challenge. And initial conversations in the UK were quite difficult. And I think a number of suppliers were between two stools on it. They were still trying to sell me an IP product that they had that were built on older versions of Dynamics and migrated to the cloud. And every 6 months, they're kind of heart in mouth wondering whether their JavaScript's still going to work or not. And I didn't really want to buy those things. But because they're still trying to sell those things, they weren't interested in partnering with me, because what they're going to say to their other customers, what we're selling you isn't any good, or what, it's a difficult position for them to be in. And certainly when I was in Seattle having these conversations with Microsoft, they understood the problem. But again, their remit is that, they've got to work with their goal partners and find a way forward. So as I was introduced to ANS Group by Minu Rami, who's responsible for the HE Accelerator at Microsoft, who I met in Seattle. And she introduced me to a number of suppliers who were interested in working with us, really. But I think what stood out for me about ANS Group from the start, Adam, it wasn't your hair. I think it was you understood where we were going.
That was my COVID hair, David.
Yeah. I think you understood what we were trying to achieve, and understood that what you needed to do as a supplier, as an evolution anyway, for your next steps to add business value to organisations like us. So I think there was a natural fit in terms of understanding the vision. And I think I was particularly impressed with some of the pre-sale stuff that your solution architect did with us as well. I think, she's a very capable person, and I think she added a lot of value to us in terms of our understanding of some of the processes we needed to develop. So I think those things all together really lent us to really thinking about what our partnership could be like. And I know we've had quite a few conversations about that. And although we're at early days, it's all very positive.
Great. So that's half an hour up, David. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. Absolutely fantastic to hear from people who are out there doing it. We've got a couple of questions. In the chat that we've answered. We like to keep these things short, educational. The recording will be made available. You'll see us on LinkedIn. If you've got lots of questions, then you've got our account managers, in our higher education account managers to lean on as well. If you want to come directly to me, my email is adam.spurr@ansgroup.co.uk. Any questions from the audience finally? I think that's been great, David. Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience finally before we wrap up? Normally when I've run these, and we run them quite often, there's not that many questions because people are a bit worried about asking a question at this particular point. But if you do have questions, come back to me, come back to your account manager. We'll be following up with you as well to see if there's anything else we can do for you. But for the time being, thank you very much, David. Thanks for your help. Thanks for your support. And thanks everybody who joined.